What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the Kai Vale channel. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, and just overall checking out the content. As you know, I am a car enthusiast, so I save all the exciting stuff for on the IG. You can definitely go over there, check it out, follow me over there. But let's get into something that's becoming a trend now, at least in America and maybe Europe too. I call it the Lux lifestyle because that's basically where we're ending up. Far as all these millennials and people not starting families and having children. So this will be the new outcome of that. And let's get into it.
San Francisco has an empty office problem. And it starts right here, in the core of the city's downtown. There is 27.1 million square feet of empty office space in the city.
Early in the pandemic, a lot of office sector workers started working from home. And here we are 3 years later, many of them are still working from home at least some of the time. All of that has led to a large reduction in the demand for office. We see a lot of companies downsizing. We see a lot of companies not renewing their leases at all and consolidating.
Nobody's going to the office. We need more housing supply. Why not just turn all the office buildings into apartments? Not quite as simple as it's.
Listen to what she just said. Why not just turn all these empty spaces into apartments? What about traditional single family homes? See, like I said, people having children, millennials wise, is on the decline. So more people, it's going to be just more single people with their pets, parrots, dogs, cats, whatever else. It's going to be a lot of stanky apartments because a lot of these millennials are lazy and they don't clean up after themselves. They wasn't cleaning up when they lived at home with their parents. So it's either save money, stack your bread, live with your parents, or blow all your money spending rent in these luxury apartments. But let's go.
Sounds.
Not every office building makes for a great conversion. Not every conversion should be done. Not every building should be converted.
Many American offices are sitting empty.
New numbers showing 94 million square feet of empty office space in Manhattan. That is an all-time record.
Huge investors like Blackstone and Brookfield are staring down defaults in their office portfolios. Meanwhile, finding an affordable apartment can feel impossible, which has a lot of mayors talking.
We have a great opportunity to change the mix of uses in the downtown.
Make it easier to convert unused office space to housing.
So the thing about office to apartment conversions is it sounds like a great idea. Nobody's going to the office. We need more housing supply. Why not just...
Well, there's a correction on that. A lot of these large tech companies, they're telling you have to come back to work or else they're going to get rid of you. Because see, a lot of people got comfortable with not, getting out there in traffic, being in crowded subway trains, and you get the idea. I mean, it's convenient. I would hate to sit in front of a computer all day at home, but at the same time, it's nice not to sit in traffic and waste time. Because the average person, it takes about the average person about 2 hours to and from to get to work and go back home, go to work and come home. So every day you waste 4 hours in traffic, getting to work and coming home from work.
Just turn all the office buildings into apartments. Not quite as simple as it sounds.
Not every office building makes for a great conversion. Not every conversion should be done. Not every building should be converted.
In some cities, the laws are making conversions difficult.
It was about 3% of the New York stock that we saw as being convertible. And that took into account differential of price between offices and apartments, which has not actually diverged as much as people may think.
But in places that have a lot of older office buildings, there's a lot of conversion activity happening.
Some big cities are looking at incentives for developers who convert buildings into housing.
Nobody does things in the real estate world out of the goodness of their heart. We have to find ways to either require or incentivize these things to happen.
What's stopping cities from converting more offices into apartments? And what challenges do developers face when taking on these massive endeavors? The office conversion trend is heating up in a small group of cities led by Washington, D.C.
So take a look at this list. These cities, have you noticed that these cities are where the non-large tech sectors are? Because the large tech sectors are, the West Coast, Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles. But half of that'll be New York too. But this leans mainly towards the East Coast, away from the West Coast. So that's another thing you got to pinpoint too. So it's not the highest demanded areas, far as tech sectors and AI and all that. These are just regular corporate America people. So
in Philadelphia,
keep that in mind.
We are right now in the Poplar building in Philadelphia. The building was built approximately 100 years ago as offices and manufacturing space for Strawbridge's Clothiers. It was a giant department store in the last century.
This building is one of several conversions conducted by the Post brothers.
Physically, may have had some characteristics that people might think would make for a tough conversion. For instance, it's 100 feet wide by 400 feet long.
That means lots of dark interior space.
The first consideration for a lot of these buildings is about access to light and air. That's why you see in some situations real creative redevelopment of these buildings where people are driving a core into the middle of the building to allow for additional windows in the middle.
We took a building that was a perfect rectangle, carved it into an E.
It's extremely complicated, it's expensive.
You also have issues of where does the plumbing lines run? And, you know, it sounds silly, but you got...
It's not silly because with that said, a lot of these places are only going to have 1 to 2 bathrooms max. Most of them will probably be one bathroom because, see, it's so expensive to just whack the whole old building with a wrecking ball, right? Because it's expensive to demolish a whole building, especially one that size. So it'll be cheaper to just restore the building than to just whack it all the way out completely. Like, just save the bones and just rip out the interior and redo it instead of just tearing the whole thing down and rebuilding it. But I think it's better to tear down the building and rebuild it. That way everything could be up to code. That way you can get rid of all the mold that's been there for years and everything else. The plumbing's updated, everything. Everything's brand new at once. It's just like when you buy a brand new car. Everything is fresh. The fluids, everything.
Got to have a bathroom in every apartment or more than one. And if you only have a single line of plumbing or a single area of plumbing, because think about the offices, the bathrooms are only in one part, it's going to be much more expensive to convert that.
Builders call this technique remassing, and it comes in different levels of intensity. The Poplar in Philadelphia received a light touch.
We have units that are 50 feet deep as opposed to the typical, 25 to 30 feet deep. We were able to make them work with things like
that's nice.
Borrowed light bedrooms,
stainless steel,
or interior
everything.
bedrooms with a light, and make really attractive layouts, even though the floor plate might
Studio.
not seem
Converted apartments tend to be pricey, much like other real estate in the US.
In a hot market where there's a lot of demand for housing and a lot of growth, such as Denver or San Francisco, that conversions could potentially address maybe 10% of the housing need. That still leaves the other 90%. And so there's clearly like a need to think bigger about how we're going to build more housing.
Back in Philadelphia, the typical household makes enough to afford
wish that
about
was California's
$1,300
rent.
in rent a month. At the Poplar, single bedrooms can rent for $2,000 a month. Then there are projects like the Atlantic, where units can rent for $3,000 to $6,000 a month.
But see, I like the look of this building right here. These are how apartments should look like. Like, this wouldn't be bad if it was for $2,500 a month. You can't beat that because you get the city views and everything. But now something like this would probably be almost $4,000 a month, especially if you're in places like Manhattan. But San Francisco compared to New York, the prices are pretty much similar. But I think New York will still be maybe a little bit more, but they're not too much different. But you got to factor in that New York has a better subway system and overall transit system than San Francisco. Let's just put that in here too. And these were built in the 1920s. And when I see buildings like this, it's a lot of artists that like to live in buildings like these. That's showing the brick on the wall,
It was a 1920s Beaux-Arts office building. We finished the conversion in 2019. There, for instance, we made a lot of structural modifications. As an office building, it had old mechanical systems that took up basically the entire roof area.
Still got some good bones, though.
Those major structural
I like that
modifications. It's to allow for really high quality amenities.
The Post Brothers portfolio includes 12 buildings in the Mid-Atlantic with plans for expansion.
We're generally 96% occupied at all places, and there might be 1 or 2 weeks where there's downtime between the old tenant and the new tenant. That's what we call frictional vacancy, so that's really the only vacancy we have.
There's a very different story unfolding in office districts.
Office vacancy rates are pretty high right now in terms of historical context. The highest that we ever recorded, and that was 19.3% vacancy rate on average. And that was a really stressed period. New York's hovering around 12, 13% right now.
That's a bad sign for investors.
Some of the office REIT stocks have been really hammered, down over 50%, just because of the back to work, which is not going as well as some.
And keep in mind that a lot of these jobs are non-union. Because in the beginning, I was feeling bad for people that went to school, or at least they were told that they had to go to school and get into all this debt just to have these jobs, the high-rise apartment and everything, just to turn around and get laid off right after they got hired. Or, you know, because when you work for these big companies, you got to understand that once they reach their main goals, they're going to look for ways to save money. And a way to save money is to get rid of you. You and your other office colleagues that you thought that were your BFFs when you go to happy hour once a week. Yeah, they're looking for a way to get rid of you. Sadly, it's unfortunate, but these people usually turn around and get other jobs right away. Sometimes they might take a pay cut. It might be for better, it might be for worse, but hey.
Some might have expected.
How the streets feel in downtowns has changed a lot in the past 3 years. Not all of those changes are permanent. It is necessary for downtowns and cities to address that perception.
Though many offices are quiet, they're not completely empty. That's a challenge for developers.
I think the actual vacancy status or occupancy status is really the single most important prerequisite for conversion, much more so than, for instance, the physical layout, the floor plates or the systems or anything like that. If there's not a clear path to emptying out the office tenants, it really can't be converted to apartments.
When a developer looks for an office to convert, they're looking for certain criteria.
1941.
For example, older buildings tend to make for better conversions.
We want 1989.
But the typical U.S. office is newer, bigger, and not vacant enough to be converted yet.
Hey, All right, that just about cuts it. I just thought I'd touch down on that. But yeah, that's the new standard of living, because see, all these young people that are fresh out of school, they want the 6-figure paying job, the 3 Series BMW, and the gym that's located within their building downstairs. So they want the dogs, they want the gym, maybe a tennis court, just everything right next to them. They want the coffee shop, a few buildings down the street. Basically the Sex and the City life. This is Kai DeVale. Don't forget to check me out on the IG channel, and I'll see you later. Peace.